Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Josh Scorcher. Tonight we got the top 10 Square Enix fails. Yep, these guys special in, well, RPGs. Oh, mostly, I think they're still stuck in their emo phase. 15, I think 16 is about to follow that same trend, so... yeah, let's just say Square's not flawless, okay? Sure, they got some hits, but yeah, what are you gonna do? Anyway, so let's take a look at their biggest fails. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go. Sorry. And the new intro, one we all know and love. Start it up.
Square is the granddaddy of RPGs, and sometimes they're as senile as one, putting out games and making statements that are only comprehensible to them.
I love grapes.
They have big plans and love to announce new products, but in terms of getting it done, gonna have to get back to you on that one. With how perfectionist and harebrained they are in their attempts to achieve their visions, they might just be run by Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, they do some dumb things, but at the very least, they know how to recover. Now they need to work on not continuously making the same mistakes.
Don't see what I mean. First up, number 10.
Get your one-of-a-kind Square Enix dictionary right here! Learn to use the terminology of all your favorite spiky-haired peacemakers. Better jump on it soon. These words are almost never used twice, and it's already outdated.
God damn it.
I hate my life.
Square Enix is a company that loves to mesh random words and letters together, from made-up words like Final Fantasy XIII's LC, Falsi, and Cieth, to several Kingdom Hearts titles throwing random words together. Those wacky auteurs at Square just can't seem to stop themselves.
You can't just start making up terrible new words.
Sometimes Square can't even use the same word for the same thing over multiple
So they like to change
installments.
terms
Summons
and make
have
up
been known
words.
as Espers, Guardian Forces, Eidolons, Aeons, and, of course, summons. Making up words is one thing, but at least have some consistency, gosh darn it! Even Zelda's better at this, and their timeline would make Doctor Who cry!
If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future. And your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
Honestly, a made-up word here or there would be fine, but it feels like Square revels in making their lore more obtuse than it needs to be, with a bevy of gibberish. Some of these games are hard enough to understand without needing their own dictionary to stay up to speed. Speaking of lore, though.
Anyway, number 9. Why is they don't change the backgrounds for that?
Okay, I know it's been a long time since I talked about Kingdom Hearts,
But
I'm gonna talk about Kingdom Hearts.
Alright, I get it!
We get it!
You guys know the drill by now, but this time let's talk about something negative about the series for once, or at least what Square Enix did to make the games harder to understand. It's no secret that Kingdom Hearts' story is harder to follow than a thread on Tumblr, but we can't really just blame the individual games for that. Square Enix honestly made it pretty hard to keep up with it in general. Think about it. Before the remasters, if we wanted the full story, we needed a PS2, DS, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation Portable, and 3DS to buy and play all of these games.
Yeah,
America had it worse though,
consoles.
since Japan had the director's cut versions of these games, plus the Kingdom Hearts Ultimania Encyclopedia, which gave exclusive interviews and lore for the games. At least when the PS3 and eventual PS4 remasters came out, things were good, right?
See?
Well, no, because then the mobile game came out, and of course, everyone ignored it because it was a mobile game and no one cared to play it. So when Kingdom Hearts 3 had specific details about said game and no recap to be seen other than an extended cutscene that didn't actually tell you everything you needed to know, people were even more confused.
Oh, God.
Combine that with other lore being just
I mean,
revealed
at least
in
Psycho
interviews,
has two
trailers,
options
side
to see
games, demos,
what the heck
and a
happened in the
freaking
previous games you
concert.
missed.
It was just a mess. Unless you were a giant nerd to keep up with it all, or had a
Like
friend
you.
who made it their hobby to study the franchise, you were to depend on YouTube summaries or scouring through wikis to make sense of everything. And even then, you'd probably miss important
Guesswork?
details. Honestly, with the release of Kingdom Hearts 3 and the current state of the internet, it is much easier to follow the details of the story and have any glaring questions answered with a quick Google search. Just be warned that they might not be satisfying answers. And I do appreciate Square making an effort to keep the games on one platform. Though that doesn't stop the fanbase from yelling at people for thinking the MMO was unimportant to the story. Seriously, how do you think we would get that?
You know, when they said when you walk away, I don't think they meant the writers at the table.
You think? Yeah, not a lot of consistency here, huh? That's the first two so far.
Cool! A big budget reboot of a thing I loved as a kid! Those are always great!
Movies that adapt video game stories have been a hit and miss subject for a long time, more often the latter. The reason why these movies fail can range from directors not understanding or respecting the source material, limitations in budget, or corporate mandate handed down from clueless executives that think popular thing is popular, therefore easy money.
Money.
With this movie, oddly, none of that was the case, and it still bombed at the box office. So what caused Final Fantasy The Spirits Within to fail? Well, it could have something to do with it having little, if anything, to do with Final Fantasy. Instead of a swords and sorcery setting with high magic and fantastical settings, we get a post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror set on Earth a few years into the future.
It's like going into a Burger King and coming out with a taco.
Burger King taco. I didn't know they made tacos.
What the?
Get the fuck.
Aside from the setting,
what kind of reality are we in?
Hard to follow. The director was trying to go for a deep story involving Gaia hypothesis and a deeper connection between life and death, but it just comes out as convoluted and cliched. What's worse is that many of the actors' performances were very phoned in, which isn't helped by a severe case of uncanny valley the animation would put you through. And that brings me to the biggest point. The animation. Oh, don't get me wrong, the photorealism was jaw-dropping in context. However, there are plenty of cracks in the overall quality, such as the eyes or the bodily movements that can be jarring to see. No, it would be the cost of the animation that would be the biggest downfall for the Spirits Within.
Really?
Square would have to build their own personal server farm that consisted of 960, at the time, top-of-the-line Pentium 3 rigged computers, all rendering what would total to 15 terabytes of video at an end cost of around $45 million, which unfortunately, added with their other costs, pushed the total cost of the film up to $137 million.
Jesus.
137 million.
And how much did it make at the box office?
Not even close.
Yikes.
This movie was such a terrible investment that years later, when Square wanted to do a Final Fantasy VII movie, directors were nervous it would turn out the exact same way. Not quite as bad in the end. They played it a lot smarter by going straight to DVD and keeping the budget down, but with that came a host of new problems. As a sequel, people had no idea what was going on in the story unless you spent 40 hours playing the game beforehand. The fights were cool, and the quick snippets of iconic scenes from the game were a nice touch, but critical moments in the story were intentionally left open to interpretation and really just felt like an excuse to get to the next action sequence. Originally, it was supposed to be a 20-minute short, but fans be fans and wanted more. And more they got, including changing Cloud from the likable, snarky, awkward dork in Final Fantasy VII to a sullen, world-weary emo. Ugh.
Really?
The director's cut was a little bit better, but that's like saying the director's cut for Batman v Superman fixed everything. Even though Square's movies are different in terms of tone and business, they have a consistent problem of being impenetrable to anyone except a specific audience, which a lot of the time means just them. Marvel movies don't have this problem. You have no excuse.
Well, to be fair, with Marvel, it's a different reality from the main Marvel universe. You know, like, the main one's 616. I mean, it's why we call it the MCU, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We know it's a different reality, you know? Think about it. I'm just saying, you can't really take a lot of, like, the comics and expect to be happening in the MCU, Pat. Sorry, the amount of times he always pulls from the comics, I'm like, dude, it's not gonna work. I'm just sorry, but yeah, what am I gonna do? I guess they tried too far and, well, right back in their face. Next, number 7.
Pre-orders, in an age gone by, originally were that stores could have enough copies come release day, so you wouldn't miss out when the next big titles were made public. Nowadays, publishers use them as a way to deny you content of a game if you don't immediately fork over your money on a hope and prayer that the product you're paying for is actually good. This reached peak peak insanity with the Deus Ex Mankind Divided pre-order bonuses and incentive program Augment Your Pre-order. This fantastic idea not only had different levels of pre-ordering your game based on how much cash you threw at Square Enix, but also was dependent on how many people pre-ordered total. If that sounds confusing on paper, believe me, it was more befuddling in action. If enough people pre-ordered to reach the Tier 2 stage, you get your choice of a digital art book or the original soundtrack, but only if enough people pre-ordered, or you outright bought the higher level of pre-order. Oh, and if you wanted everything? $140 hard cash before tax, please.
You get off on annoying people, don't you?
Fans were a tad bit upset, needless to say. So much consumer backlash and outcry came from this that Square Enix decided to scrap the whole idea a few months later. They tried to play it off as, we're listening and we understand you. But they truly did. They wouldn't have tried this hackneyed attempt to get purchases in the first place. They would have relied on good marketing and word of mouth to sell their game. Then again, this is Square Enix, where you could sell 3.4 million copies and not meet expectations.
Seriously? Caramba. Next.
Final Fantasy as a series has consistently given us memorable characters in just about every entry, with many of them becoming some of the most iconic characters in gaming. No matter your tastes, it's certain you'll find a favorite. I know I did. For years, fans had speculated about how cool it would be to have a crossover game where they would have all their favorite characters team up. Dissidia and its sequel definitely scratched that itch, but it wasn't the RPG that purists were looking for. But then, for a time, it seemed that wish would become a reality. Final Fantasy All the Bravest sounded like a dream come true, with the promise of having your favorite characters join forces in a crossover, all recreated in the iconic art style of Final Fantasy VI.
But then the game actually came out and it,
It was horrible.
The gameplay consisted of little more than rubbing your finger across the screen and hoping for the best. You had to pay additional money in a non-free game to get the characters you wanted, provided the game actually gave you the one that you were looking for, and the game had free-to-wait mechanics for when you got a game over. The game was so mercilessly torn apart by fans and critics that Square Enix publicly apologized for it, pulled support, and came back with Final Fantasy Record Keeper, which is pretty much everything All the Bravest should have been. It's not perfect, mind you, but it did accomplish the goal of placating fans.
For now, but yeah. If you do it again, they're gonna be coming back with a vengeance. Whew. Number 5?
Back in the glory days of the series, there was at least one Final Fantasy game among the best sellers for consoles. 1 on the NES, 6 on the Super Nintendo, 7 on the PlayStation, and 10 on the PlayStation 2. So when the 7th generation of game consoles began in earnest, fans were pumped at how Square Enix would use this new technology. Announced in 2006, delays and development issues stalled its eventual release until 2009. And the response was...
Burn in church?
While the presentation was top-notch as always, the compliments end there. The level design was horrifically linear, with most of the environments consisting of corridors that went on forever with the occasional branching path for a treasure chest. Same problem with the skill tree, which just boiled down to holding down a button to increase stats rather than actually making meaningful decisions about how to develop your characters. Yes, the game does open up eventually, but it's not until Chapter 10 where you can actually pick which party members you want to use, and nearly every side quest is just a glorified mini-boss. You know, it's bad we needed the fans like to joke that 13 has a 20-hour tutorial. Of course, all those issues pale in comparison to the story. The game drops you right into the middle of the action while refusing to explain even the most basic details about how the world works. Want to know the bare essentials to what's going on half the time? Better go read the data log. Even if you do that, once you get past all this, you have bland, annoying characters that do little than just react endlessly rather than actually affecting the story. But no discussion of 13's characters would be complete without talking about Lightning. While not the worst character in the game, Square felt the need to turn her into the next Cloud and forced her down our throats for years. The worst part is that it displeased both her haters and fans. Her haters couldn't stand seeing a character they didn't like to begin with being pushed on them, while her fans couldn't stand seeing the once tough yet caring Lightning turned into an emotionless waifu with all kinds of uncharacteristically sexualized outfits in the sequels. And speaking of sequels...
Yes. Poor Lightning. I wanted to push her, but that failed hard. Next.
In case you've been living in a rock in another dimension, Final Fantasy games generally tend to be self-contained, which most of them taking place in their own world with some recurring elements connecting them together. Unlike Zelda, there's not really a timeline. So whenever Square makes a direct sequel, it feels pretty unnecessary. Don't get me wrong, these aren't always bad, just look at Tactics Advance and Dissidia Duodesim, but the vast majority of them are forgettable. Starting off, we had Final Fantasy X2, which discarded the tone of the original completely in favor of all kinds of fan service antics, while also discarding the creative battle system that made X's combat so good. To say nothing of 7, whose unnecessary sequels, prequels, and spin-offs tarnished the once acclaimed RPG's reputation. The plot was made way more convoluted than necessary, even by their standards, and turned Cloud from a snarky, well-developed jerk into a fangirl pandering emo.
I wear long sleeve shirts under short sleeve shirts under long sleeve shirts.
Wow. Oh my god, you're awesome.
Oh my god.
And then we get to 13.
Really?
People were decidedly split on that game, but Square decided that we needed 2 direct sequels. Now, to be fair, 13.2 did fix the overwhelming feeling of linearity, but it introduced time travel, making a borderline incomprehensible mess of a story completely incomprehensible. And as for Lightning
Good luck with
Returns...
that. Like we said earlier, that. Really, dude? I don't think they're interesting instead of sexual.
Need I say more?
Fair enough. Yeah, so, like I said before, and I'll say it again, Square Enix just stuck in the past and trying to recreate the magic of yesteryear. Oof. They just can't seem to get them right. And just when they try to have a cash cow, it just folds because it's a standalone, not something you can build upon. Like, seriously. They keep learning these mistakes. Anyway, moving on. Final 3, here we go. Alright, first up.
Final Fantasy XI was a great MMO and helped solidify that a Final Fantasy MMO was not only viable, but could be very popular and profitable. To Square Enix, this was a mid-level game, easier to develop and maintain than their bigger titles, and had a decent revenue stream. Even now in 2019, servers and the player base are still active, though maybe not as big. When World of Warcraft was released and shook up the MMO market, Square Enix thought they would have to go big for their next title. This, unfortunately, would be their undoing. When Final Fantasy XIV released in September of 2010, the critical and fan reception was harsh. The user interface was jumbled and confusing, map layouts were designed like an MC Escher painting, and the story and quests were practically non-existent. The developers had spent far too much time trying to make the game as graphically beautiful as possible that the rest of the game suffered. It's a well-known joke that a potted plant in a city hub had as many individual polygons as a player character. This level of detail also explained why so many were having performance issues and connection problems. Eventually, Square Enix admitted they screwed up and would be working with Naoki Yoshida to fix everything wrong with the MMO by blowing the whole dang world sky high!
Yep. Start off from scratch with a big old explosion. Let's go!
Beautiful.
This would work out in the end, as now Final Fantasy XIV is still Square Enix's big MMO and just had another expansion release.
Yeah, and more.
What places the original so high on this list was the company's insistence that it was graphics alone that would be the deciding factor for customers. And because of this foolish notion, we got one of the biggest MMO bombs out of it. Thankfully, at least from the ashes of one terrible game, something new and good came out of it. That animation is freaking awesome!
That's inspired Gleam there. Alright, number 2. MMORPG, where are we going next?
Okay, show of hands. Who else thinks that the Final Fantasy VII remake is going to turn out like Half-Life 2's non-existent episodic releases? I know I am.
Development hell is a phrase coined for games that are stuck on the back burner for years, going between multiple developers before finally getting released and doing pretty badly. Duke Nukem Forever is one of the more infamous examples of this, but there are some games that do go through this hell and are able to reach paradise without issue. In those cases, it'd be more of a development purgatory then. If so, then Final Fantasy XV spent more time in purgatory than most. In 2006, Square announced 3 games for its next step of Final Fantasy evolution. The Fabula Nova Crystallis Collective, with games such as Final Fantasy XIII and Agido 13 making the scene. But it was the legendary Versus 13, directed by our darling Tetsuya Nomura, that really got fans excited. Flashy gameplay, an edgy protagonist, Shakespeare quotes thrown in for no reason. People were hyped. But then 4 years passed and we heard nothing. 13 was released to critical meh, Agito was turned into typo and got released, but we heard nothing on Versus. The only thing we had was some gameplay against the behemoth and the occasional trailer saying, "It's not dead, guys, we swear!"
I'm not dead.
Then in
Will be
2013,
sooner or
we
later.
finally heard the news. Versus was transforming into Final Fantasy 15. People got re-hyped and then, well, we actually heard a lot more. Though it still took 3 more years for it to come out. And when we finally got the game in our hands, it was
Okay.
good. Yeah, it was a lot better than 13, but a lot of people waited 10 years for this game to come out, so it really wasn't going to live up to the hype. Especially because the Rush story was mostly spoiled in a majority of game demos and trailers released beforehand too. It seems to happen a lot.
Whoops.
Switching directors from Nomura to Hajime Tabata helped get the game to completion, but it still left fans really disappointed after a 10-year development cycle. Plus, we still had to wait another year or
probably
two
when I'm not
before
gonna
the
do that.
Royal Edition was released, and the game actually became pretty amazing, with a lot more content and a more fleshed out story. The only reason it isn't number 1 is because this story of sordid development of a million engine changes does have a happy ending, but it was still a long, harsh road to redemption. Too bad with Tabata's departure we won't get the rest of the DLC, but at least we're done with this game for now.
Now to wait
Word for
another
now.
10 years for Final Fantasy 16. Aren't you excited?
No.
No!
Getting there, but hard to say. Who knows where it's going.
E3, the big expo every year where all the gaming companies try to one-up each other in both showmanship and show their gaming audience, but mostly their shareholders, what amazing products they have in the pipeline. In 2015, the previous showings had been going well. While Nintendo didn't have much to show that year, Bethesda had shown off Doom and Fallout 4. So what did Square Enix have to show off?
Stats?
Talking.
Good boy.
Lots and lots and lots of talking. I did a live stream of this, and I can say I haven't even had college lectures that dull. Instead of showing off the games themselves, Square Enix instead had developers or producers coming out to show products that had already been advertised at previous expos or were in other developer conferences that very year. 30 minutes in, and they had shown only 2 titles, Just Cause 3 and Tomb Raider. Then after showing off a quick flash of other titles we already knew were coming out and more talking, Square Enix said they had something big to reveal. A Final Fantasy VII remake! This would have been huge and exciting news! If the exact same trailer hadn't been shown just a few hours earlier. And then, just when you think you're gonna get a glimpse of something Kingdom Hearts 3 related, mobile game! And even then, when they gear up to show something about Kingdom Hearts 3, they do even more talking!
Stop talking!
Unfortunately,
Thank you,
the conference
Mordecai.
goes even
Oh, that's
further
Rigby, sorry.
downhill from there with
Thank
even
you, Rigby.
more trailers that were already shown. The whole conference ends up
Bro,
being
a
like
little
Square
late.
Enix forgot to do their homework and asked to copy from their neighbors and then proceeded to make it freaking obvious. I did a live stream with Inkrose and Alex as we reacted to this presentation, and you could tell it wasn't exactly thrilling. Out of a presentation
Honestly,
that
I
was
would've
an
been like,
hour and
okay,
10
boring.
minutes long, they showed 23 minutes of video games and less than 5 minutes that was actual gameplay.
Boring. This is so boring. This is so boring. Get to the show.
This was one
Thank
of the
you.
worst E3 presentations I've ever had the misfortune to sit through. Unlike Nintendo or Microsoft, it wasn't even ironically funny. And to any developers that might be watching this, if you ever decide to announce a spin-off title to a beloved franchise, you do it after you show the game people want!
You guys want to have phone? Yeah.
I'm the Fiery Joker, and after an exhaustive fails list, I think I'm gonna wind down with some Three Houses gameplay and, yeah, a pack of my favorite snack food, Funyuns.
Uh-oh. And Sega's next.
Next month, Sega.
Yeah, basically to wrap it up, Square Enix was just a company stuck in the past. And inconsistencies and, well, false promises, I guess. But I'll figure something out later. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that one. Woof, that was rough. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that one. Until next time, like, subscribe for more. Good night, everybody.